Then the sixth relationship between God and the jiva. God is bhartru, which means husband, and the jiva is bharya, which means wife. Again, this is only to illustrate the unbreakable bond between us and God, and to show that there is no intermediary figure or a third figure in that relationship. That ultimately the bond we have, the bond that the jiva has, is between jiva and Bhagavan, Atma and Paramatma. There is no bond between jiva and other jivas and Prakriti that is of any consequence to this. This is the one and true bond, bandha, okay? It is bhartru, God is husband, and bharya, the jiva is wife. The roles could be reversed, it makes no difference. It is only to illustrate the commitment from one another and the unbreakable nature of that commitment. That is why we are referring to husband and wife, because it then presumes that the vows of marriage have been taken. Okay, just to illustrate that point. Then, number 7 amongst these 9 relationships. Actually, before we go to number 7, one final point about number 6. There is something extremely beautiful about this notion of the unbreakable bond, because unlike every other relationship and every other attempt at satisfaction and fulfillment that the jiva goes through in its embodiment, this one with God has no end. It cannot be broken, and it can never end in failure, so to speak. And that is a very important factor or feature that has to be highlighted. Okay, all others eventually, or let's say inevitably, end at some point, because it is not the jiva's inherent nature or constitutional position to be bonded to neither Prakriti nor to be bonded to other jivas. It's the inherent position of the jiva to be bonded to Bhagavan. And so until that happens, all others will be unfulfilling for that jiva. Please make note of that. It's an important point. Sorry, now we go on to relationship number 7. Relationship number 7 is that God is Gnatru, which means he is the object of knowledge, and the jiva is Gnaya, which means the knower. So when I went through the swarupa of the jiva, the inherent nature of the jiva, one of the things I said was jnanam or chitta, which means that the jiva has knowledge inherently. Its nature is to have knowledge, consciousness, right? Avidya, ignorance, was not one of those 5 natures of the jiva. So the jiva has knowledge. It knows itself. It understands itself, and it has knowledge of its relationship and position in relation to God. Okay? So in that sense, that which the jiva is wanting to know or seeks to realize, is the object of its knowledge. That is God. Okay? So there it creates the dynamic. It is not God who's trying to know us. It is we who are trying to know God. Okay? God is Gnatru, the object of knowledge, and the jiva is Gnaya, the knower, the one who is to know. The 8th relationship that Pilelokacharya proposed is that God is Swami and the jiva is Sva, meaning Svaswami. It is the property of Swami. Swami means the proprietor, and Sva in this context makes us the property of the proprietor, the belonging of the proprietor. Okay? So, I illustrated this point already before when I mentioned the phone, for example. In the material world, when we own a physical object, there's a very superficial relationship towards that object. Why? Because the bond between us and that object is externalized, and there is nothing that unites the two. We, for example, do not enter into the phone and permeate every part of the phone. Okay? Rather, we hold it, we use it, and we discard it. But this is not the case between God as the proprietor and jiva as the property, because God permeates us. He permeates the entire universe. The universe also is property, meaning that the relationship there is far deeper, far more significant, far more intimate than the common understanding of, oh, God is just some big boss in heaven who owns all these little toys and he plays with his toys. This is the wrong concept, because then we are nothing more than discardable objects, whereas that is not the case, because he has chosen to infuse himself, to enter into those very objects themselves. Now, if you were to treat those things as discardable toys, you would not enter into it yourself and become so intrinsically linked and bonded to that thing. Okay? Now, if we had done a full class on Ramanuja's Vishishta Advaita, this point would be much more clarified, I would say, or much clearer to you. But we have plenty of time in the future to go through that and make that even clearer for you. But I think the point has been made nonetheless, that although we do look at ourselves as the property of God and God as the owner, because he permeates every inch of his property, that relationship becomes actually an organic and inseparable one between proprietor and property. The ninth and final relationship between the soul and God is that God is bhoktru, which means enjoyer, and the jiva is bhogya, which means the enjoyed. Or another way of looking at it is that God is bhoktru, the experiencer, and the jiva is bhogya, the experienced. What this means is that the jiva exists so that God can enjoy the jiva's lila, the jiva's service, the jiva's journey. God is the one who is enjoying because he is the ultimate agent of all actions. Please understand this, that actually anything that we own as jivas, qualities, skills, abilities, and therefore we gain this thinking that we are the agents of action. I have done this, I have done that. If we look at it in this sense, actually it is God that has done it. Why? Because he is the one that has given us the capacity to do those things, the skills. So even if directly he was not the one who did it, indirectly he is always the only agent. He is the one enjoying, he is the one experiencing. Because he is the one that has given us all these faculties, all these capacities, all these abilities and skills. So everything, all of creation, the souls and the material universe, their worth, their performance, their existence has to be measured in relation to God. Meaning, what service are they doing or what function are they performing for God? And in that sense, we say God is the enjoyer and ourselves and the universe are the enjoyed, that which he makes for his experience, okay, for his pleasure, however we wish to put it. Nonetheless, it explains the dynamic between the two. It is not the reverse, that the universe and the jivas created God for them to enjoy God. Although I'm sure many atheists would have us believe that. Now, that concludes the 9 different relationships that Pillai Lokacharya said exist between the soul and God. Do not confuse this with 9 forms of bhakti that you may have heard elsewhere, which are 9 forms of expressing devotion to God, or different bhavas, that we can have moods of friendship to God, or intimate relationship to God, or anything like that. I'm not talking about those things. I'm talking about conceptual principles that help to illustrate the dynamics of who we are in relation to God. We are his property. We are those that are seeking to know him. We are his servants, those who are providing enjoyment and experience for him by his wishes. That kind of dynamic, okay? That's why he created this concept of these 9 relationships between the jiva and Brahman or Bhagwan, okay?